All right, welcome back to the Be a Man podcast. I have Tony on with me. Tony, introduce yourself. What are you about? What's your Instagram? All that kind of stuff. Introduce
All
yourself.
that kind of stuff. First and foremost, hey, thanks for having me on, Justin.
Yeah.
Truly honored and blessed to be here with you today, man.
Yeah.
My name is Tony DiLorenzo. I've been married to my beautiful wife, Elisa, for 26 years. We got 2 kiddos. One's out of here, and one is almost out of here. And you can find what Elisa and I do at One Extraordinary Marriage. That's Instagram, Facebook, or you can go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com.
Awesome. All right, so 26 years. So what have you learned after 26 years of marriage that you'd like to share with everybody?
Man, that is a big question. You know, one of the big things I think that I've learned over 26 years, and I just want to share, like, I and Elisa almost got divorced twice. One was early on in our marriage. That was probably right around like the 4-year mark. And one was around that 11-year mark. Now, divorce came up at the 4-year mark. At the 11-year mark, it wasn't that it came up. And yet we had 2 young kids and we just felt it. Like, it's just like this roommate stuff going on. You know, you're sitting in that roommate syndrome. And we just decided at that point in time that these 2 things I'm going to share are vitally important. And it's what's transformed our marriage and thousands of others in the one family. So it's being intentional and taking action. Because those 2 things, when we address them in our marriage, things begin to change. It may be slowly, but as we begin to be intentional, even I was intentional in certain areas, and I started to take action, things begin to shift. And so that's what I try to do daily, is think about, okay, how am I intentional in my marriage and how am I taking action in that? And it can be just little things as well. So it doesn't have to be this, like, I'm going on a big old romantic date every night. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hey, I'm going to just make sure I'm saying this to Elisa that then helps her to understand where I'm at and helps her to locate me, but also, you know, builds her up and gives her the self-confidence she needs. It, you know, so different things like that. So it's be intentional, take action.
Yeah, that's really good. I'm thinking about 2 things as you're saying that, and one is how, I mean, you're talking there about the different seasons in life, and especially in marriage. We just hit 15, so
Congratulations!
still got
right on.
lots of little ones, and we've got 13, 9, 5, and 2. So
wow,
there's a pretty good gap, but you know, we didn't necessarily plan it that way. It just kind of happened that way, and it is what it is. But there's definitely, I mean, the seasons of marriage and life and kids and all that, it can take its strain on marriages, and we've definitely experienced that whole just going through the motions, it seems like. So, I mean, how do you help people like attack those times and be super intentional and taking action? Like, what are some things? I'm just thinking about somebody who may be in it right now, or who may be on, you know, they're thinking divorce might be the only option. What do you tell them right now?
So right now, if that's where you're at, you got to get some space and you got to get some clarity. And so when I hear people, and a lot of guys like at my church will be like, oh, you're Tony. My buddy told me to talk to you. And they'll like just grab me and they'll be like, hey, so this is what's going on. And I'm like, okay, well, you got, for you, for example, Justin, 15 years of marriage.
Yeah.
And then I don't know how many years before you knew your wife, but then there's some other stuff going on. And so what I usually tell guys at that point in time, I go, listen, Elisa and I have the top-rated marriage podcast called the One Extraordinary Marriage Show. Open up your favorite podcast app, which you're probably listening to right now. Search that and start scrolling. We have over 700 episodes. Start listening. Because a lot of it is like we get information. You know what I'm saying, Justin? Like we'll hear something but we're only hearing one side of it. Like we're hearing the guy talk or we're hearing the woman talk. And on the show, Elisa and I are talking to one another. And so it's only been us for 13 years of podcasting. We started in 2010. And we're sharing. Elisa's the coach. She is the coach here at One Extraordinary Marriage. So she has her side of how she sees things. And then I have my side of things. Like we usually say, I'm the color commentary. I'm telling the stories. But in that, you're going to either find yourself more like Elisa as who you are in the marriage, or you're going to find yourself more like me in the marriage. And you can hear how we're engaging one another. And that in itself is that start, right? It's being intentional and just going, hey, I'm going to just take some action and just hear what's going on. And then start taking what we're sharing, because there's many different areas that we could go in. But I find that people start to find those episodes that are just like, oh, that hits home. Oh, yeah, I'm in roommate syndrome. Oh, yeah, sexless marriage, I'm there. Oh, we haven't talked. Oh, we're arguing. Yep, that hit. And so it just helps them to go, oh, okay, I'm not alone as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I like that. It seems like sometimes you just get in these like ruts, and it just
absolutely.
Like, man, what do we do to get out of this? And it just
and it's like we want to just come alongside you, and we want to be those parents, maybe those marriage mentors that you never had. Like we weren't taught marriage. You know, I don't know if you went to a class that was just like, hey, we're going to teach you what marriage is like. I don't know if your parents did that. Mine didn't. I learned from what they showed me. And yet when I look back, I'm going, man, like they had some interesting times in what they did in their marriage, and what I learned from them isn't really what I want to be living my life. And so I'm going to have to make a shift to go, this is what I want my life to be. This is what Elisa and I want our marriage to be. And so our hope is that, you know, we can come alongside you and just go like, you're not alone. Here's what we're doing. Here's what others in the one family are doing. And you can do it as well.
Yeah. So you hit on something there that I think is a huge issue for a lot of marriage. So backstory, I'm a small town rural pastor. So I deal with a lot of this, and, you know, and us ourselves, we deal with it too. But it seems as though in-laws, other family members, and that whole concept of breaking off and like leaving and cleaving and you establishing your own family, it's almost like it's a forgotten thing now. And there's just these attachments you have. So how would you encourage, you know, new married people, whatever, setting those boundaries, all that kind of stuff? How would you encourage them in that?
So definitely need to set up your guardrail, right? We need to have those. They are necessary for us to grow individually and for us to grow in our marriage. As you said, leave and cleave. We need to cleave unto one another, not unto our parents. I know we've done a number of episodes around this, but the first thing I think about is I go to our book, which is called The 6 Pillars of Intimacy, and I look at every pillar. And we need to go through those and go, okay, where is it that our parents, in-laws, other family members are causing cracks in those pillars? And how are we going to set up our guardrails? Funny story, this was happening in mine and Elisa's marriage many, many years ago. And I come from a large Italian family.
Okay.
At the time, the majority of us lived here in Southern California. Many of us still live here in Southern California. I was young, married. I got married when I was 23. Elisa was 22. And so trying to deal with those family dynamics were tough. And so the way we ended up doing it is literally we picked up and we moved to Washington State. I don't recommend this. I don't recommend this. And yet, for the year and a half that we did live in Washington State, and I think we had been married 4 years at the time, going on our 5th, it did allow us to set up some guardrails. We got some distance from family, and we just got to do things on our own. Like we didn't have to go to Christmas and Thanksgiving with the family because that was just what was expected of us because we lived in Southern California. We had to make new friends. We had to set up new routines and new traditions, and that we thought were going to happen. Lo and behold, Elise and I do not like winter. So the middle of the second winter, our son was born, and we were just like, nope, we are out of here. So I did everything I could to unravel, sell everything, get Elisa and our oldest back down here. And a good buddy of mine was in San Diego at the time, said, hey, come to San Diego. And we've been here ever since. But that did help because I then was able to stand up. I had to stand up to my dad. I had to stand up to my mom. And I had to say, hey, this is my family. Elisa and I are my family. Doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't mean that you're not part of my family. And yet my job as husband leading this household is to protect my family. And so were there tough discussions with parents and all? Absolutely. In love, and I would just have conversations. And what we always say too is, if it's your parents, you deal with your parents. If it's her parents, she needs to deal with her parents. You don't start coming in and start telling her parents what you need to do and stuff, because that changes the dynamic unless you've opened that up and said, hey, we're going to do that. If Elisa's folks have issues, hey, Elisa, I need you to talk to your folks. And then if we're doing it together, cool. But that's the way we set it up, because it really helps to just go, this is what's going on. Now, I just want to say this though too, Justin.
Yeah. If
there's abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, anything of that nature, then by all means step in, protect. That is not acceptable. And so do get help for that,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Yeah. I always joke because I always like winter until January. So I'm good with snow, until January, and then I'm done. I'm ready to move.
What we found out in Washington State, we lived in Spokane.
Okay.
And it was interesting. Everybody could get through January, and then February, everybody left. We're like, where's everybody going? Well, those who live in the north, the Northwest, the Northeast, Midwest, whatever, where it's cold, they're all like, we're done. We've dealt with it. We're taking off. There's a week in Cancun. There's a week in Hawaii. There's a week somewhere where it's warm, where we can get a tan and get some sunlight. So I was like, oh, this is really interesting. I never experienced that before in my life.
That's funny. Yeah. We had a conference down in Florida, pretty far down, Fort Myers area, a couple of weeks ago. It was 85. It was warmer than what it normally is that time of year for down there. I'm in a t-shirt and shorts or whatever.
Oh.
We get on the plane, and our layover was in DC, and it was 28. We got off the plane. We're like,
no.
We're going back.
We've had a cold winter here, and we're putting on our 6 Pillars in Paradise marriage getaway.
Yeah.
And that's going to be in Cancun, and I am literally just counting down the days of keep looking at my weather app. I'm like, it's 83 to 85. I'm like, that's what it needs to stay, because we have us and 24 other couples joining us there in Cancun for 5 days. I'm like, hey, let's go.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me backtrack just a little.
Sure.
How has faith, the church, all those things, the Bible, all that, how has that been a help, or what has it meant to your guys' marriage? I should put it like that.
Yeah, that's a great question. So Lisa and I, when we first met, we were not practicing any faith at that time.
Okay.
We both grew up Catholic, and when we met, we were far away. So our journey to Christ and coming back into being a follower of Jesus took some time. And where it happened was, it was our 3rd year of marriage, and we had been backpacking, hiking. We'd grown into doing this, and I had this dream on one of our hikes, and I'd been looking at this trail. It's a long trail here on the West Coast. I've been looking at it, and I'm like, I want to do that. And so one summer, we were out on this trip called the Ray Lakes Loop. It's 40 miles in the Sierra Nevada range, and we were on the Pacific Crest Trail. And I looked at it, and I'm like, Elisa, this trail goes all the way down to Mexico and goes all the way to Canada. I go, I'm going to do this trail. The following year, I ended up stepping foot on that trail, completed that trail in 138 days.
Awesome.
But it was on that trail that we both had our experiences and our come to Jesus moments. I met a guy named Arkansas Dave in Tehachapi area, about 500 miles in, and ended up hiking the rest of the trail with him. And Dave was and is a Christian, going through some hard times though. And I saw somebody who is living out their faith. He was going through a divorce, or had just gone divorced, and his business had gone south. And I was just seeing this guy just on the trail, just working through his faith, some years ahead of me, not many. And I just remember looking at one point in time when we were in the high Sierras, just looking around, just going man, there's more to life than just what I believe it is. And Dave there introduced me to the Bible at one point in Oregon. We were talking, he threw me a travel Bible, and he's like, hey, read John. And I'm like, who's John? Like, I don't know. I grew up Catholic. I don't even know if I opened a Bible, tell you the truth, Justin. I probably did, but I didn't know the Gospels like I do now. Or then I was just like, who's John? He's like, just, it's a fourth book of the Bible. I'm like, oh, okay. And I read it that night, and that's where I was just like, I'm living my life for Christ. Awesome. And while I was on the trail, so that was my convergence of like, wow, there's much more than me. And I need Jesus in my life. And then on the other side of it, Elisa's having her own experience. She stayed back. She didn't come on the trail or hike with me. And she was also having this like dialogue with God and with who is Jesus. And she had this experience where one night, all of a sudden, she had this thing down, and we talked about, like, if anything happens to you at the apartment, we had this awesome apartment in Costa Mesa, California. Anything happens, you just call 911. That's it. Just call 911. You're by yourself. You don't need to do anything else. Well, one night, 3 drunk guys came banging on her door, thinking that it was their apartment, and she happened to stand up, go to the door, and go, what's going on? But she heard a voice behind her and said, this isn't your apartment. She audibly heard a voice, and the guys stopped in that moment. They sort of looked up and they're like, oh, this isn't our house, or this isn't our place.
Wow. And
just went on their way. And Elisa went to sleep, woke up the next morning. Obviously she was stressed out and everything, right? Sure. Like that was like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, she went through the emotions and everything that happened, woke up the next morning to go out, and literally only the chain was holding it. They broke everything else. Huh. And so that was her moment. And then when we got back together after I came back from the trail, we got a flyer from Saddleback Church back in the day.
Yeah.
Rick Warren's church, when he was pastoring, has since passed on to another pastor there. And we walked into Saddleback like this is Disneyland. But that's where we began to learn about Christ. We got baptized there, and have never looked back.
Awesome. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I enjoy hearing those stories because everyone's is different, and it just there's something unique and amazing about hearing other people's testimonies. Like, and usually, a lot of people, it's not some grand thing, but it like for you, it was you opened the Word, you started reading, and it became clear. And it's like, that's what he does. That's what he's been doing, and that's what he'll continue to do.
It just came alive, and we've been walking our faith out ever since. And highs and lows between, loss of a child, going through the Great Recession, seeing your kids succeed and not succeed, praying for them, praying for others. Times when you're stressed out and you're like, how am I going to tithe this week? But God makes a way. And so we continue to walk that out, and we will never stop walking it out. So
that's awesome. I love hearing those stories. It's really cool. Yeah. And I mean, and it just speaks more into what I'm trying to do. And what I ask a lot of people who come on about manhood in general, but biblical manhood, like how would you define it? What are some of those key things to manhood in your opinion?
The two that I usually go to are, as one sharpens another, as iron sharpens iron, right? Because I do think for us men, we can get isolated, and it's easy to just go, I don't need anybody. I'm going to figure this out. And I do think God has brought people around us and wants people around us to sharpen us. And I have been in both places. I've been dull. Like, I've been in my own place where I got this, I can do this. I got Jesus, and with him by my side, all things are possible. Like, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Yes. And yet God has called others to come alongside us to sharpen us. Are we willing, though, to meet with them? Are we willing to open up? Are we willing to be open, honest, and transparent with them? Are we willing to be vulnerable with them so that they can see the stuff that doesn't look so great? And I do believe that's vitally important. And then I always think about putting on our armor. And how do we do that so we can not only protect ourselves, but our loved ones, and putting that on and believing for that. So those are the two. And then I guess I got one more too. I got the prayer of Jabez. Oh Lord, that you'd bless me indeed and enlarge my territory, that your hand would be with me and that you'd keep me from evil. And I say that many, many a times a day, because I believe that covering and that blessing God wants for all of us, but it's what we put in our head is going to determine where we're going to go. And so I had to find my own self going like, no, I believe this is true. And I believe that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is also my father. And so saying that helps me to go, oh, wait a minute. God is partnering with me in what I want to do to be a man in my home and in my community and for others.
Yeah. Yeah. So going off those three principles, how do they make you a better husband, better father, better man in your church, whatever it may be, better neighbor? How do those things help you be a better?
Yeah. So the first one, if I'm around guys who are sharpening me, I'm getting out the junk. I'm rooting out the stuff that is holding me bondage, right? That's holding me down. It could be anger. It could be guilt. It could be shame. It could be pornography. It could be lustful thoughts. It's like I'm getting that out to somebody else who's helping me sharpen myself. So that's that. When I look at the armor side of it is I am willing to put on that armor and I'm willing to go to battle for my wife, for my kids, for my family, for my community. And the way I go into battle is I go into battle through prayer. Like I'm going to stand up and I'm going to be like, let's go after this. Like I'm declaring like we're going to break those chains off of you. I'm going to believe that healing power that we have seen throughout the Bible, throughout the gospel. When Jesus touched somebody, they were healed. Like I can believe in that, but I got to put that armor on every day. Because if not, then there are chinks in it, and then it starts to like rusty and it looks sort of drab, and then I don't go to the practice that I know is so vital, which is prayer. Mm-hmm. And so am I willing to stand up in prayer? And then the prayer of Jabez, the way that I see that, it's more the covering, that blessing of like, God gonna bless us. He's gonna expand our territory. And he's there, like, and he's going to keep me from evil. It doesn't mean nothing bad's ever going to happen. It just means that it's going to be that I'm going to see it. I'm going to be able to call it out, and I'm going to be able to just move it and just say, rid it from my life. And so I find myself almost every morning, Justin, really just, even as I get up just to go to the bathroom, even the first time, is like, I'm already saying that, like, I am like, oh Lord, that you would bless me indeed and enlarge my territory. As I'm walking to the bathroom, I'm just like, I'm going to declare it now. This is my declaration. And so that's how I would look at each one of those.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. How is your wife or even your kids, as they've seen these things, because they have, how have they responded to that?
Elisa and I now pray 3 days a week together.
Awesome.
That's something that we've been very intentional about. And we had to rid ourselves of what the pastor, and I'm not putting this against you, but like we had to come up with what spiritual intimacy looked like for us. And that for us, it doesn't mean that we read the Bible together or silently next to one another and then get on our knees and pray. It means that on our calendars at 8:30 on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, our alarms go off. And it means it's prayer time, and we get our communion cups and we go pray. And that may be 5 minutes, it may be 10 minutes, it may be more, it may be less. We just know that 3 days a week, we're going to get together and we are going to pray. So that's changed there. Kids being teenagers and one just having turned 20, they see it. And I think a lot of what they go through and what they see is through the the vision of church and people. And so I'm always just sort of like, hey, it's like, I'm just speaking faith into them and just going like, even if they're not like wanting to attend church, or I'm just like, you do know you have a Heavenly Father who loves you, like just loves you like beyond what your mom and I could even love you. So always know that even if we're not around, you can always seek him. And so I think they just see the consistency. Like we have morning prayer here at our church, men's prayer Tuesdays every week. And I just go. My goal is to make it 3 out of 4 of every month. Like that's my goal. Some months I make it all 4. Some months it's 3 out of 4. Sometimes it's 2 out of 4. Just depends on what's happening in my schedule. But they see we go to services on Sunday. We serve together. We've done different things together. We've been anywhere from just on a team all the way to assimilation directors at our campus. Like we've led large teams. 200-300 people. We've done so they see it, but they also can. I also just share it with them, like, hey, like this is where you're at. Like, how's that sitting with you? Like you're going through this time. What are you doing? How are you seeking God's guidance in this? So yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah, I like that because I mean, we've worked with teens for a long time, but it's different when your own turns.
Absolutely. It's also bringing others alongside.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's helped with me with my kiddos. Like, they're just like, oh, your dad. It's like, okay. So I'll find another man in the church and be like, hey, Alex, my oldest, hey, he knows you. He respects you. When you see him, could you just talk to him? Like, don't make it weird. Don't make it uncomfortable for him.
Yeah.
Like, he was always the kid anyways. He was there. He would get it. He's just very just stoic. He's just not necessarily stoic, but he's just, he doesn't have this emotional like, oh my gosh, everything's great. Like he's a big presence. He's 6'2", 230 odd pounds. He's a big presence. Has been ever since he was probably like in 8th grade. But if I'd ask a man that I trusted, just go, hey, talk to him. Like when he blew out his ACL, one of my buddies, I was like, hey, Tom, can you just go pray for him? Can you just pray healing over his knee? Because I know he's scared. And if I try to bring it up, it's like, oh, Dad, stop it. It's weird. Like, Dad, I got it. We're going to go to surgery. We're good. But if somebody else comes in, he's not going to say that to him. And I was just like, just don't make it weird. Just pray for him, man. And so, those were moments so that he remembers.
Yeah. That's encouraging. I found myself, with other kids, other teens, you go home at the end of the night, but with your own, you go from that right back into it. And so It's definitely been a new season, and there's been challenges, but lots of opportunities. And it's just cool when they eventually embrace what you're trying to get them to see. And, and the hard part is you went through the same stuff. So it's like, and you know how stubborn I was. So,
yes. Yeah. They're all different. Some are just all gun ho. Others aren't. And so each child is different too. You got 4.
Yeah.
So they're completely different. I mean, and we want that. God made us all each to be individual. Like we are all just individual imprints of who he is. Yeah. And with our children, they are that. And so I think we just continue to show, we continue to share, we continue to bring other people around. Hey, go to youth camp. I mean, you have a small group or connect leader or whoever that person is, go talk to them. And we've done that many a times. Just we'll loop somebody in and just be like, hey, this is what they're going through. Can you just text them and just reach out to them? And that's been so helpful for us over the years. As our high school has said, especially the football team, it takes a village. And we lean on that village often when it comes to our children.
Yeah, it's encouraging, especially knowing you're not alone in a lot of stuff. And it's good to hear from people who've gone through it already too.
Oh yeah. We're still learning though. It's always a learning. And with one gone, one still here, they're still learning and guiding and coaching. And hey, how do I help you? How do I help you? But also know that our Heavenly Father has you no matter where you may be.
Definitely. That's good. Well, Tony, if people want to learn more about what you guys are doing, we didn't even talk that much about your Instagram or any of that stuff. And I mean,
That's okay.
it's okay. But why don't you talk a little bit about it and just throw people out there where they can get a hold of you guys, or they have questions or any of that stuff.
Yeah, I would say the best way, Justin, is we have our best-selling book called The 6 Pillars of Intimacy, The Secret to an Extraordinary Marriage. And we actually have a free quiz. And I think it's the best way to people just like to jump in, to learn where they are, like what's your strongest pillar, and then go from there. And once you do that, you'll learn everything about us. So to do that, go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/free quiz. And I know One Extraordinary Marriage is long and it's ONE, but hey, just go to oneextraordinarymarriage.com/free quiz. Jump in, see where you're at, and then once you get into that, you can pick up the book, you can start listening to the podcast, you can follow us on Instagram or wherever you may want to. But I really want to put something in your hands so you can look at that and do what we said at the beginning, and I shared at the beginning: be intentional and take action.
Definitely.
Those two things you can do right there, and then see where we can take you so you can have the extraordinary marriage you desire.
Now, let me ask you something, because wives, I've found, are usually more apt to take advantage of these things, but a lot of times husbands are not. So what would you say to the guys?
You know what? Here's the thing, though, Justin, and I do believe it's the way that Elisa and I have been part of One Extraordinary Marriage for all these years. It's both of us. And so I'm coming behind you and coming beside you and saying, look, I was a mess. I know what it's like. I had an 18-year porn addiction. I have gone through the loss of a child. I know what anger feels like. I know what it feels like when you lose everything and you got to go borrow a car from a buddy. I've been in these places. And so you don't have to do that all alone. So just go do it. Be intentional. Take action. Like, just take one step to just go, you know what? I'm willing to start this journey. I'm not saying it's going to happen overnight. It can. Well, we've seen it happen, but Elisa and I have been on this journey for 15 years. And I will say I am glad I'm on it. Doesn't mean I'm perfect. It means that I'm on it and I'm taking a step forward in learning to grow as an individual and in my marriage each and every year. And I will tell you, as you get older, as the years pass, you better be intentional, take action, because once those kiddos are gone and it's just the two of you and you're looking at each other and you go, I don't know who you are. Guess what? It's why gray divorce is up. It's why people are splitting up in their 50s after 33 years, 35 years of marriage, because they're like, who are you? I don't know who you are anymore. I don't think anybody gets into marriage or says I do on their wedding day to end up 33, 35 years later to go, well, that was fun. I guess I'm going to start over again.
It's sad. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. I always, because guys are always hesitant, it seems like. I'm always like.
They are. And yet, I'm here. Like, I love the one family. I'm here to encourage and bring hope. And I've seen so many men stand up, and I've seen it happen over and over again. But again, I think it's because it's not just Elisa's voice. They get to hear both of our voices and understand that, hey, we go through tough times. And you don't, like, I get it, man. My dad died almost 6 years ago now. So going through that hurt and that pain and the grief, and what does that feel like, and what are you dealing with? Man, I wasn't always like this. I wasn't able to articulate like this. If you listen to some of the early episodes of the podcast, probably the first year, whenever Elisa would say something that was frustrating or just irritated me, I would just talk over her. I'm just like, I don't want to hear you. So I'm going to just talk. And that's not healthy. And so you learn and you grow. And I do believe that's where God comes alongside us, and he does. And he's just sort of like, hey, man, I didn't ask you to be perfect. I just asked you to follow me.
Yeah.
So are you willing to do that? And so I would say the first best step, like I said, take that quiz. You don't even need to, I would even share it with your spouse to just be like, hey, check this out. Like, here's something that we could do together. And in showing her like, hey, man, I'm interested. Like I said, I did all this stuff, interesting things to date you and get you to marry me. Show some interest in her again. You'd be surprised what can start to happen.
Definitely. Yeah, that's really good. And, Tony, I always end my podcasts with giving the guest an opportunity to give the guys a challenge. And it can be for the week. It could be for the rest of the year, whatever it is. It could be for today. What's a challenge you would throw out there?
What's one positive word that you see in your spouse that you can say over her? And do it repeatedly. Because the power of our words can shift mountains. I mean, it's right there in the Bible. Speak to that mountain, it will move. And I believe the words we use too often are those words to cut down. And I would challenge you to find a word that identifies who your wife is and speak that word over her, even when she doesn't want to hear it or when she doesn't even believe it. Because she needs you to stand up for her and let her know that. And I am a product of that. I've seen it happen. And I've been doing it for probably 13 years now and have seen the shift happen in my own life and in my own marriage.
Excellent. I love it. That's really good. That's something I always, it's funny. I always walk away from these like I'm challenged, like there's something I can do better. And that's what I want. And I hope the listeners too, they get that. Like there's always something we can do better. And that's a perfect challenge and something I need to do better at as well. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I really have.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been fun. I think it's going to be good for men. And I think part of it too is that a lot of times guys, they feel like they're all alone. And so when they hear what you're saying and what you're encouraging them with and your own challenges that you've overcome, man, that's what they need to hear. Like, you're in this fight. We're in it together. Like, let's keep pressing forward. Let's keep pressing on, especially in a culture that just has devalued men to near nothingness. And we need more men like you, like others, to stand up and say, we're going to do it different. We're going to do it different. We're going to do it.
Well, I thank you, Justin. It was fantastic being on here. And to everybody who's listening, thank you very much. It's truly an honor and a blessing to be able to speak into your life. And I don't take that lightly. So whatever you do, just step in it, man. I just encourage you to just go, hey, I'm willing to do one thing today. That's it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Tony. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin.